In this presentation, we're going to talk about some tips for developing amazing project-based learning modules. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your teams are grouped effectively. Each team should have an approximate average academic ability. And I say academic ability just means they've got an approximately average score on a common module. Mathematics is a common one you might want to use for this. That's obviously not a complete picture of their ability, but it is very simple for grouping purposes. You want to make sure that you do this because it prevents complete failures from teams. Rarely do you get a complete team that will fail the module when you group this method. Whereas if you group randomly or letting students pick themselves, that can be the case. And if you do have a project-based learning module where there are multiple cohorts, make sure each team has some element of other courses in them. This way, each team gets to expose to its members, but also you can potentially provide an interdisciplinary style project. Industry engagement is really important for modern engineering courses. Companies are usually very keen to engage and they'll often provide you with non business critical projects, maybe something they've had on the back burner for a while and just haven't got around to completing or couldn't justify the resource to complete. This is really motivating for students because they get to tackle an actual industry project and it'll give them an insight into what they'll be doing when they leave. You can also pitch this as a method for companies to scout potential graduate engineers. The the interview process is relatively faulted, but actually sending students through a live project will allow them to assess their ability in a simulated work environment. Developing project-based learning modules can be really tedious in terms of accumulating resources. But what you could do is couple your module to an existing engineering challenge, such as the Engineering for People challenge with Engineers Without Borders, or IMechie's Design Challenge. There are many around the world, very similar to these, that also exist. These give students the opportunity to compete against other students, present to external audiences, potentially even international audiences, and obviously the opportunity there is to win prizes. How you develop your assessment strategy will very much determine how students behave on your module. Modern students are quite tactical with how they spend their time, energy, and effort. So there needs to be some level of incentive here to make them engage. So if you wish to avoid passengers on your modules, so these are just students that sit in teams and take credit for teamwork, you might wish to increase the individual contribution mark. I've set some sample values on the right, and this will obviously allow your students who are engaging more to score higher. It'll mitigate the influence of non-engagers on the overall mark of another student, because this is always a gripe from students. They're often upset the fact that students not only take marks, but students affect their mark. So this is a nice workaround for that. And those who don't contribute will very, very unlikely pass. But again, how you incorporate this, how you structure your assessment may be very much affected by your learning outcomes. Where possible, you want to minimize marking. I've already said that these modules are fairly challenging to put together, fairly resource intensive. So where possible, you want to do the least possible marking because that's an extra admin overhead. So you could use peer marking on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You can use Peermarkify and you can set up a module's worth of assessments in approximately 10 minutes, most likely less. If you set the peer marking for the individual contribution element of the mark, that will leave you only to mark the group elements, such as a presentation or a report, significantly reducing the workload, but also providing an element of assessment for engagement throughout the module. It's really important to set ground rules at the beginning of projects. This sets the expectation for everyone and will really help your teams get moving in a productive direction. Team contracts are a great way to do this, and it's recommended to do this in the first week. Sit the students down, give them a blank piece of paper, and let them decide what the expectations are for arriving on time, providing work, what the standards of communication are, general conduct. These will be needed later on when we talk about managing the non-engagers. Students need to know what they're being held to, what the standard is, and what the standard they can expect from other people as well. It really does help team cohesion and teamwork. But obviously, there is another side to this. Life is incredibly complex. Things do happen along the way. So you might want to consider advising them to develop what I've called here compassionate clauses. But this should really be driven by the students. You can give them ideas, but they must do it themselves because they'll get maximum benefit for it. So every group project has non-engagers. It's very, very rare that's not the case. And this can massively not just affect the progress and outcome of the teams, but actually the morale as well. An effective way to remove these students from the groups is the red card and yellow card scheme, where students gain a warning after some level of non-engagement. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks. Once this is reported, they're provided with a yellow card and expected to make up the work they've missed. If that doesn't happen, then they're red carded from the team and moved to either work on their own or with students who have also been red carded. This is why it's so important to have a really clear team contract so students know where the boundaries are, what's expected of them, and how to behave. It's really great for the student journey, for their morale, and for their general progress as developing engineers to celebrate the work they've done. So, organise a showcase at the end of the module. Give students the opportunity to present their work to other academics or industry colleagues, maybe if you engage some for the assessment brief. Provide a really nice focal point at the end of the module where students have something to aim for, something to focus on when they're kind of in the weeds towards the middle of the project. Prizes obviously are a great incentive. I don't think I've ever known a student turn down a cash prize. So definitely include some of those, get some funding and make a real event of it. It's really worthwhile. So we know that project-based learning modules provide excellent development opportunities. We know that students learn the softer skills, learn the working with people, learn the things they'll actually be doing in industry. But it's a very serious consideration that they have a massive admin and marking overhead. So preparation is absolutely key. And as we saw with things like setting the ground rules, proper preparation can really mitigate the issues that will come down the line if not prepared for. So hopefully you found this interesting. If you want to use Peermarkify for your peer assessment, please go to peermarkify.com. You can also get in touch there if you have any questions, queries or comments via the contact tab. Thank you for watching.